want to share with you what's happening to me and the reasons behind it. I need as many people as possible to be informed. I feel that they are gaining more and more power, and I am powerless. I couldn't stop it, but maybe you can. I'm Mike, 24, and something inexplicable happened to me. An entity that breaks the laws of physics and is becoming increasingly powerful, causing great fear. I hope it can help those who, like me, are these victims and want explanations about all this. Or for people who have been a little too curious. When I was little, in primary school, I had a friend. His name was Boris. We used to talk a lot with my group of friends. Boris frequently attempted to describe a cartoon he had watched on a video home system tape, but we only half listened to him. In elementary school, discussions focused on pogs, marbles, and cartoons. One day, Boris arrived at school looking extremely pale. We thought he was sick, and we didn't dare to talk to him much. He appeared deep in thought, his eyes darting side to side, a peculiar smile on his face. That same day, during class, he began whistling. He was whistling a strange rhythmic music, but the notes made me uncomfortable, without me knowing why. Despite the teacher's repeated warnings, he persisted in his behavior. His eyes, wide open, scanned the room. The impatient teacher stood up and approached Boris, who continued whistling. She held his hand and led him straight to the principal's office. All the students looked at each other, quite shocked, while I looked at my friend's empty chair. And there, on his desk, I saw that cassette. I stood up and walked towards it. I wanted to know what it was, even though I had a slight idea. It seemed to be in good condition, and the label on the front confirmed my suspicions. It was written with the guys. It was the cartoon Boris was talking about. He said he saw a man whistling constantly, holding an axe. He discussed his top hat and balloon-shaped head. Everything else was far too blurry. We ignored Boris when he discussed the cartoon. As mentioned, I took the tape and put it in my bag. The teacher came in, apologizing to the whole class, and we resumed our classes as if nothing had happened. I could tell from her look that she was disturbed, as if something had happened in the principal's office. I was eager to get home to watch the tape. I wanted to watch this cartoon, thinking it might explain Boris's odd behavior. After school, I greeted my friends and took my bike. Then, I pedaled so fast that I got home in record time. I entered, greeted my parents briefly, and rushed to my room. Then, I took the cassette out of my bag. I examined it for a moment. I noticed a previously unseen detail. The label might have been in good condition, but the writing was strange, as if it was roughly written with a pen. Just as I was about to turn on my television, my mother called from downstairs, her voice shaking. I put the cassette in my old toy box and quickly went downstairs. My mother was at the bottom of the stairs, tears in her eyes. My father stood just behind her, a hand on her shoulder. That's when I first experienced losing a loved one and the ensuing grief. I remember exactly the words my mother said. She told me,
"Mike, your
friend Boris had a accident."
Yes.
My mother couldn't pronounce the last word, but I didn't need it. I went down the remaining 3 steps and fell into his arms. That night, I cried like I had never cried before. I took his loss very hard, sparing you the many details. I didn't go to school for almost 2 weeks. I didn't have the motivation anyway. I was followed by a psychologist for an entire year. Then, over time, I ended up grieving. Even if it still happens to me today, several years later, to think about him and cry. I only found out the details of his death much later. And I warn you right away, it's particularly morbid. My mother never wanted to tell me. I had to rely on the rumors I heard at school and in the local newspapers. The case was not very anticipated. It was too horrible to be so publicized. According to reports, Boris was discovered dead, naked, and hanging from a chandelier by a rope in his room. His face was particularly frightening. They explained that his eyes were wide open. Even worse, he was smiling with all his teeth. I didn't probe further. The information provided was sufficient for me. I must admit that it was mainly the circumstances of his death that disturbed me the most. This also prompted me to consult a psychologist, without discussing it with my parents at the time. I wanted to do everything to forget these events and stop thinking about my friend's death. Over time, I slowly lost touch with my primary school friends. I live today in a house with my girlfriend. I have a job. I am a receptionist in a hotel. I have hardly thought about Boris in recent years. The periods of crisis were getting further and further apart. My girlfriend and I recently did a big spring cleaning. We chose to declutter and discard unused items. So I went up to the attic in hopes of finding interesting things to resell. I found quite a few things there that stirred my stomach. Albums, an old bag of marbles, class photos. I didn't dare look at the latter too much. Boris was in most of them. I then directed my gaze towards my old toy box. I don't remember when I brought it here. Maybe when my parents divorced and sold the house. I have no memory of it. I headed towards the box. The wood seemed in poor condition, worn by the years. I felt a strong wave of nostalgia as I opened it. I had all my primary school years before my eyes. Action men, muscular male figurines prepared to confront any peril. Old sports cars, including 2 remote-controlled ones. I used to play an old bowling game every weekend with my parents in the garden. After a few minutes of searching, I spotted it again. The cassette, it was placed in a corner of the box. It didn't seem to have gathered dust. It was in perfect condition. Just like the first day I got it, I stared at it for a few minutes, lost in my thoughts. Thinking back to Boris, I saw him hanging from the rope, a frozen smile on his face, his mouth moving in a strange way, his eyes staring at me. And then he whistled. His whistling and the sound of the strained rope under his weight created a disturbing auditory spectacle. I shook my head to dispel these thoughts. Then I grabbed the cassette. I don't know why, but I had completely forgotten about the existence of cartoons. My therapist must have done a great job. I had no memory of it until then. While in the attic, I searched for my old video cassette recorder. After an hour of rummaging, I finally found it. I tucked it under my arm and went down to the living room, explaining to my girlfriend that I was taking a break and would resume the search the next day. I wanted her to know nothing about all this. Once in bed, I waited for her to fall asleep before returning to the living room. Then I turned on my television. I struggled to find the right connections, but it eventually worked. The video cassette recorder appeared to be working properly. I grabbed the tape and looked at it for a few seconds before putting it in the player. The sound was so familiar it gave me chills. However, the lengthy wait for an image to appear on the screen was unfamiliar. I was either at the start or the end of the tape. Then, to my great surprise, an image appeared. So the tape had been rewound. It was an old cartoon from the 30s. You could hear a metallic noise with a slight cartoonish music. The sound was very typical of old cartoons or old films from those years. The image was in black and white with a slight sepia tint. You could see what seemed to be an old garage or a do-it-yourself shack. A character was seen from the back, hammering at something. He then chose another tool, a screwdriver, and continued to build or repair something. After a few moments, he started to whistle. I felt awful chills, as I had already heard this melody before. The silhouette gradually turned around and seemed proud of its creation. It was an axe. On the other hand, the character was strange, with a head shaped like a balloon. He wore a tie with a knot that seemed impossibly tight, as if it would strangle anyone wearing it. He had typical cartoon black eyes from the 30s and a very small shaped hat on his head. It was him. It was the Whistleguy. He headed outside of his house with exaggerated gestures, typical of cartoons, his eyes shining with excitement. A tree that seemed far too big for him took up all the space in his yard. A cartoon-style bubble appeared over Whistleguy's head. The calculation showed an axe plus a tree equals a cut tree. He planned to fell the tree to tidy his yard. That's why he had made an axe. For a moment, I wondered how it was possible to make an axe with a screwdriver. Or why doesn't he already have one in his workshop? Then I remembered that it was a cartoon. Sometimes you shouldn't look for logic. The Whistleguy started whistling even louder, throwing his axe, spinning it in the air, and catching it before it hit the ground. He repeated the action, like a poker player fiddling with his chip. Then, at the tree's base, he spun his axe again, lodging it in a large branch. The Whistleguy seemed to struggle. He then hopped in place trying to catch it, without success. Suddenly, a light bulb appeared above his head. He had an idea. He then approached the trunk and shook the tree with all his might to make the axe fall. It worked. The axe fell. To embed itself in the head of the Whistleguy, the music stopped abruptly the moment the axe lodged in his skull. With a particularly realistic sound of water and flesh, one could see the expressionless face of the Whistleguy, his gaze empty. The scene was particularly unhealthy and surprising. I expected him to pull the axe out of his head and rub the top of his skull as if nothing had happened. In most cartoons, no one actually gets hurt. But instead, a trickle of blood ran down from the top of his skull, where the axe had lodged itself deeply. On my end, I was shaking with fear. The cartoon was unprecedented for its time, as far as I know. The Whistleguy kept staring into the void. After a short moment, swirls appeared in his eyes. The blood kept flowing more and more, until his face was covered in it. Then he started to smile. In the blink of an eye, the Whistleguy went from a cartoon character, anything more mundane, to something much more frightening. After a few seconds, he moved. He raised his hand and sharply yanked the axe lodged in his head. There was a horrible suction noise. Meanwhile, the music resumed as soon as the axe was freed. But it was no longer the same. It became gloomy, dark, frightening. In line with the images, the Whistleguy no longer seemed to care about the tree. He was looking at the axe he held in his hands. It was stained with blood all over. The Whistleguy's smile kept growing wider. He was staring at the axe with interest. After a few moments, without warning, he walked, proudly holding his axe in his right hand. Blood spurted from the top of his roughly open skull. His smile and eyes were especially horrifying. The whirlpools in his eyes spun faster and faster. His smile had become macabre, and blood was now running over his teeth. Then, as his eyebrows furrowed more and more, he started to whistle the same melody as before. A strange character was nearby. The latter waved at him and approached the Whistleguy, smiling. The Whistleguy violently struck him in the shoulder with an axe. The character's arm snapped off. Then he screamed in a macabre way. While the Whistleguy continued to pelt him with eggs all over his body, his piercing, shrill screams could be heard through the screen. He continued on, until there was nothing left but mush. He then picked up his axe and whistled once more. On his journey, he encountered another character. This one, having seen the porridge on the ground, immediately tried to flee. But the Whistleguy quickly threw his axe, which, with a whistle, lodged itself in the character's back. It seemed to be a woman in a flowered dress. He then ran in her direction and detached the axe. Then he split the air again and lodged it in the poor woman's skull. He repeated the action multiple times, leaving the woman's brains scattered in pieces around her. The Whistleguy continued to kill all the passers-by he saw in a particularly macabre way, always whistling with a smile on his face, as if he had completely lost his mind. And without warning, he stopped. The music and all sounds had suddenly ceased. He was turned away. And he didn't move an inch then. His head started turning slowly, but his body remained motionless. By an inch, you could hear cracks breaking the silence, as if he was breaking his neck in his movement. Little by little, his face became visible on the screen. He looked at me, staring with his swirling eyes and smiling. The Whistleguy could see me. Then, he slowly raised his axe. His other hand's finger slowly moved to his mouth. And while looking at me, he made a shushing gesture. Everything cut off after that. No more images, no more sound. The video was over. The tape came out of the video cassette recorder by itself, without me having to intervene. I sat there for a good dozen minutes, not knowing what to do, both paralyzed and in total understanding. What just happened? I was certain that the Whistleguy had signaled to me as a warning. He had seen me from behind the screen, tired and disturbed by this macabre experience. I took the cassette, put it in one of the drawers near me, and collapsed on the couch. During my short sleep, I had a strange nightmare. I saw him, the Whistleguy. He was watching me sleep. I was completely paralyzed. His body was leaning just above me, his face facing mine. He had a chilling, frightening smile. His axe was embedded in his skull. Drops of blood were falling on my face. I could see my reflection in his eyes. He was so close. I still couldn't move an inch. He raised his hand, grabbed the handle of the lodged axe, and slowly pulled it out, causing a disgusting noise. He pulled harder and harder. Streams of blood flowed during his act. I got it all over my face. Then, with a dry noise, it detached itself. His smile then became wider, his eyes swirling, growing with mischief. He raised the axe above his head, and before delivering the blow that would have been fatal, he raised his other hand, then put his index finger in front of his mouth. And there, like at the end of the video, he did. Then he struck the top of my skull with a powerful axe blow. I awoke in a sweat, my heart racing rapidly. I sat down on the couch and wondered if all of this was real or not. But there was nothing around me. No Whistleguy, no blood. I was alone and it was still very dark. It must have been around 6 in the morning at that time. I looked at the video cassette recorder and remembered that I had put the tape in the drawer. I opened it, took the tape, and put it under my arm. I went to the attic and threw it in the middle of the room. I've never found it again since. Watching the cartoon worsened in the following days. I was seized with violent nausea, dizziness, and hallucinations. At least, I thought they were hallucinations. I could see the Whistleguy while I was watching television. It could be during an episode of The Simpsons, or even Family Guy. He only appears in cartoons. On day 1, I was sure it was just my imagination. During an episode of The Simpsons that I couldn't quote to you. He was in the credits, in front of the front door of the family home, holding his axe above his head, while Homer parked his car in front of his house. He only appeared for a few seconds, just long enough for me to rub my eyes, and he had already disappeared. The next day, it was like I said in an episode of Family Guy. During the credits, he was at the top of the stairs where the family dances. He was also dancing, with an axe stuck in his head. He stayed visible for longer this time, and, even worse, he seemed even closer to the screen than during his last appearance. I then saw him in several different cartoons. The thing I can confirm to you now is that he was indeed getting closer and closer to the screen. So much so that I could no longer watch cartoons, for fear of having him in close-up, his swirling eyes staring at me through the screen. So I completely stopped watching cartoons afterwards. I was tempted to look for the video and show it to others, but something was holding me back from doing it. Wasn't that what Boris had done? That's when I asked myself a multitude of questions. Why did Boris bring the video to school? Why was he so eager to talk about it? Did he want us to also get infected by the Whistleguy? If so, for what purpose? After his on-screen appearances, I thought I was free of him. It became even worse. During walks in broad daylight, I would hear him whistling behind me. I was awakened several nights by the repeated ch-ch-ch sound from under the bed. I never dared to lean over to see if he was there, because I knew that was the case. But I especially did not want to see him. I searched the net for information about the cartoon, but nothing. I suspected it, because I had never heard of this cartoon except from Boris. So I was completely in the dark, enduring his presence. I knew he was there, but I couldn't do anything, and I had this feeling that talking about it would have made things worse. Everything was getting worse and worse, as I told you. I could hear him day and night. Only he had never made himself visible, never in reality, never until that night. One evening, as I was driving home from work, I heard very light whistling, barely perceptible, coming from the back seat. I didn't dare look in the rearview mirror right away, but after several minutes, my curiosity was too strong. I glanced in the rearview mirror. I had my foot in front of the brake pedal just in case, but there was nothing on the back seat. Since he was on the passenger seat, I slammed on the brake in panic. I had time to see his hands approaching my face. He screamed piercingly. While hurriedly exiting the vehicle, I fell, facing the car. Then, I saw the passenger side door open, and he started to whistle. Gradually, his body was being exposed. He was walking slowly past the car, axe in hand, whistling cheerfully. The headlights faintly illuminate his face. I could see him terrifying and blood-stained, a gaping wound on the top of his skull. He stopped whistling and didn't move an inch. I struggled to back away. I didn't dare to stand up. His head slowly turned towards me, and like in the video, his neck cracked, accompanying the movement of his head. His eyes, terrifying as never before at that moment, were fixed on mine. His mouth was frozen in a horrible grimace. His body was still as immobile. Neither of us moved. After a moment that seemed interminable, his head made a strange movement. Then it started to swell. It swelled and swelled until it reached an enormous size, far exceeding the height of the car. The noise was shrill, like multiple rubber balloons, inflating simultaneously. His smile became even bigger. Under the pressure, his eyes popped out of their sockets in a manner reminiscent of cartoons. The blood from the top of his skull was spurting and splashing all around him. The car's headlights were smeared with blood. The red light cast a horrific vision, illuminating the swelling monstrosity before me. Then once again, everything became effigy. There was no longer any sound, no movement. And after a moment of silence, he charged at me screaming. I was too surprised to react. He was approaching me at a remarkable speed, his mouth gaping open. And just before his body touched mine, his head exploded in a deafening crash. I felt pieces of his skull hit my face and body. Despite the panic, I was finally able to get up, and I ran with difficulty to the car. I was so stressed that I couldn't even turn the keys still in the ignition. I wanted to get out of here as quickly as possible. I had blood in my eyes and I could barely see what was happening in front of me. After a few moments, I was finally able to find the keys and quickly turned them to start the car. Just before stepping on the accelerator, I could see him. The Whistleguy was still standing, axe in hand, his head slowly swelling back up. But before he could do anything else, I sped off, stomping on the accelerator, and drove very fast all the way home. I noticed that there was no blood anywhere anymore, as if none of this had ever happened. I couldn't sleep that night, because, in addition to these events, he was back at my place. I could hear him whistling outside, in the garden. I haven't told you about my girlfriend, but you should know that I haven't told her anything. She found my behavior very suspicious that week, even though I tried to hide my emotions as much as possible. The fact that I slept on the couch one night didn't help either. I was afraid to talk to her about it, because she couldn't hear it. She also didn't see it when it appeared in cartoons. I was afraid that if I talked to her about it, she too would end up seeing it being tortured by its presence. She heard and saw it multiple times after that. But that's not the worst. The worst is what I've become little by little. Just like him, I started whistling without realizing it. I heard it more and more often. It had become daily. I would sometimes see him staring at me through the window, when I was coming home on the road, or when I was taking my shower, I know I'm doomed, but what I'm sure of is that I must not share this tape under any circumstances. That's why one morning, I went to the attic to get it and destroy it. But it wasn't there anymore. I was sure I had thrown it in the middle of the room. I still remembered the exact spot where it had landed. I immediately asked my girlfriend if she had seen it, pretending it was a video of me as a child, which I had found while cleaning the attic. But nothing. She hadn't touched it, and I know why I couldn't find it. I know that the Whistleguy was keeping it with him. He gave it to Boris, who was on the brink of death. So, after his death, the Whistleguy could directly attack someone else. Everything is planned by the entity, so that the first victim dies, then the second victim also dies in turn. In short, it's an endless circle. These victims must believe that they will be saved if they share the video. I think the Whistleguy is playing us. In my eyes, he is only trying to kill as many people as possible by torturing them. And I want to avoid that at all costs. That's why I can't find the video. He knows that if I find it, it's only to destroy it, not to share it. So here I am today, a frozen smile on my face that I can't remove. The muscles in my cheeks are tired. But I had to tell you this before I go. I wrote a farewell letter for my family, for my girlfriend too, without mentioning the Whistleguy even once. I especially don't want my loved ones to start looking for this tape. This recording I'm making for you serves a purpose. It's crucial to warn as many people as possible beyond my immediate circle. The cassette has indeed disappeared, but I'm certain that the Whistleguy dropped it off at someone else's place. If one day you see this famous cassette called Whistleguy's Day, don't touch it at all. If it's only to try to destroy it. Don't try to watch it under any circumstances, because otherwise he will be after you. While I'm recording, I can feel his breath on my neck. I know he's behind me. My smile also becomes bigger. Now, I know why the Whistleguy was asking me to be quiet now by making these repeated falls at me. He knows that I'm talking to you about it. He knows that it's going to harm him. He knows once I put this noose around my neck, he'll be unable to act for a long time. He seems to have known all this from the start. So, please, those of you who hear me, if you find this videotape, never watch it, because the Whistleguy can be anywhere. His videotape is within everyone's reach. I was able to hold him back for a while, and maybe prevent him from acting more quickly, but he will eventually come out of the shadows again. And if that's the case, if you stumble upon it, he will catch you too, and you will live forever in the nightmare of this cursed cartoon.